The Switch currently is a pretty hot button topic, especially with its pricing of the games, the consoles, and whatever have you. But there's something slightly more insidious going on here, and this is specifically in relation to the game's pricing. Basically, we know that Mario Kart is going to be is going to be costing 80 USD. But that isn't the only game that's also going to be costing $80. So, basically the world's shocked to know that it's going to cost 80 USD, and obviously that's going to change as per each region depending on where you're at. But there are other games that were announced during the Nintendo Direct that are going to be costing 80 USD. We're talking about games like Kirby and the Forgotten Land, the Nintendo Switch 2 version, plus Starcross World, Super Mario Party Jamboree, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition and Jamboree TV, and also The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, Nintendo Switch 2 Edition. Notice something really weird about these three games. Kirby and the Forgotten Lands, Mario Party Jamboree, and Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom were all games that were on Nintendo Switch. And now they are coming over to Nintendo Switch 2. Basically, all three of these games are going to cost 80 USD. And I don't believe that the updates to these games are going to cost you that extra $20 or $10 depending on what game you're talking about. Because Kirby, Mario Party, both cost 60 USD and is now costing 80. So original release on Switch 1 was 60 and now is costing 80 on the Switch 2. Legend of Zelda cost 70 USD and was the first game to cost 70 US dollars on the Switch 1. And it felt really weird and jank at that time because of the fact that this game was not coming out on a new platform. It wasn't doing any of that stuff. Instead, it was coming out on the Switch, which had other $60 games, and now is being cost $80 just because it's coming out on the Switch too. Yeah, it's $10 more, but every other game is costing $20 more. So who's not to say that, hey, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom would be sold for $90 of all things? There's just no reason for any of this to be done the way that it is. But basically, Nintendo of America's Vice President of Product and Player Experience, Bill Trinen, really didn't help matters, all things considered, with this whole situation. Basically, in his response, this is basically like Nintendo responding, is that he said that Mario Kart would justify its price tag during the Mario Kart World Nintendo Direct, where fans will learn more about the game. And it's less about the strategy of the pricing and more about what is in the game, what's the content, what's the value, what's the experience. But the thing is that Mario Kart World isn't really that massive of a leap. Sure, it might be from Mario Kart's standpoint, but from other games, it just really isn't, if I'm being completely honest. It really doesn't help matters that it's bad optically, regardless of how much games used to cost back in the day. A lot of things roaming around. Basically, he's just trying to sell the game even more with this whole explanation that he's giving. That's so big and so vast, so much things to discover and explore, other secrets and things like that. And the funny thing is that, like he said, Trinan asked about the $80 cost of Nintendo Switch 2 Edition games, which is the Nintendo Switch 1 games, coming to Nintendo Switch 2, and he said while there is a $10 upgrade path for existing owners of these games on the Switch, both Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild Nintendo Switch 2 Edition and Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom Nintendo Switch 2 Edition are available as part of Nintendo Switch Online and Expansion Pass members. Which is incredibly weird when you think about it, because hey, if you got Nintendo Switch Online plus Expansion Pass, and say for some reason you didn't want that Expansion Pass anymore, you know what'll probably happen? You'll probably have to pay to get access to those Nintendo Switch 2 editions. Anyways, so either you buy the game on Switch 1 and then upgrade it, or you buy the Nintendo Switch 2 edition, which doesn't give you access to the Switch 1 version, but only gives you access to the Switch 2 version, because getting Nintendo Switch Online isn't really worth it, and nothing really makes any sort of sense in any way, shape, or form. Like, why on earth would you do any of this? Why on earth would you go about doing things in the way in which you have? And I mean, if it wasn't already bad enough with like Nintendo keycards, for example, which are just giving you the license to download the digital version while using the same cartridge that you're using to access the game. Again, it just really doesn't make any sort of sense in any way, shape, or form. But apparently these upgrade packs are going to cost $10 each, and that was prior to the actual announcement of upgrade packs even being available. But basically he's saying, I think overall our general approach is just focus on what's the content, what's the value, and where the appropriate price is based on. And I don't think this article goes into as much detail, but there was also basically Doug Bowser also did a interview where he was talking about variable pricing. And this is going to be a real fun one to talk about, because basically they're going to look at each game individually and price them between $60, $70 or $80. But the problem with that is, hey, variable pricing is nice and all, but the thing is, if games did cost less, that would be cool. If games cost more, there's a bit of a problem, because the thing is that variable pricing only works one way. If it costs, ideally, Nintendo wants to sell games with a higher ceiling, not a lower floor. So the floor price is the lowest the price of a product can be, and the ceiling is the highest. They're going to raise the ceiling, but they're not going to lower the floor. As a result, if they do sell any games, they get to price anything at $60. They've only priced games at $70 or $80 US. And that is the insane thing. Variable pricing is something that is absolutely should be despised, disgusted, and hated in every way, shape, or form. This whole thing is basically to bash on the fact that for some reason, Doug Bowser, president of Nintendo of America, is talking about variable pricing on Switch 2. Actually, let me see if I can actually grab the interview itself. Here we go. Nintendo Boss on Switch 2 and tariffs. We are actively assessing what the impact may be. So basically, okay, well, I guess I'm not using The Verge then. Who do we have next? Nintendo Everything, I guess. It's like the second one on the list. Okay, so here is what Bowser said to CBC. Is that Comic Book Central or something? I don't know. As we look at Nintendo Switch 2 and think about the feature sets that I talked about, we believe that the pricing is appropriate for the value of the machine and the gameplay experience overall. We recognize there are some people who may not be able to afford the Switch 2's price point. That's why we wanted to make the other Switch platform available. Basically, this is what Xbox ended up doing. Matrick said, if you can't afford an Xbox One, buy a 360. And that's what he said. And then the Xbox One floundered majorly. Not just because of that, but for a number of other reasons. So people have an opportunity to come into our gaming universe, be a part of these characters in these worlds, and see value, if you will, in whatever rung of the platform they come in. Yeah. That's interesting. So yeah, they're basically going around and just sort of going with variable pricing at the moment, which is unfortunate. Yeah. I don't know, man. I don't like this at all. But the thing is that I think it's about time Nintendo got kicked off its high horse. Yeah. So here's like an example of Mario Kart World costing $80 USD. $70 digital, $80 physical, and then you've got Donkey Kong Bonanza being $70 physical, $60 digital. Will maintain their price, and of course, like, Nintendo never ever really puts their games on sale, so they're just going to be selling at like an incredibly high price no matter what. But you can see like pricing just kind of across the board across the various games that they've been selling. But regardless of that, it still doesn't change the fact that, like, I think it's about time Nintendo got kicked off their high horse, and rather than constantly boasting about all of their successes, that they face a little bit of failure. Because the same thing happened with Xbox going from the 360 to the Xbox One generation. The same thing happened to PlayStation from the PS2 success to the PS3 generation. And now we have Nintendo, who is exceptionally successful with the Switch, and I think are really gonna fumble the Switch too. But that is what my thoughts and opinions are based on everything that I'm seeing and what I hope to see. Let me know what you guys think about all of this in the comments below. Like the video if you liked it, subscribe to the channel. I'm aiming for 500 subs by the end of the year, and if you watched until the end of the video, that's the best thing that you possibly could have done, so I really appreciate it. But with all that being said, I do upload every day, so I'll see you guys tomorrow.